Today we're going to talk about how to overcome the greatest challenges in life, how to manage your internal mindset, if you will, and how you approach problems and overcome them, because we all have them. So what you got for us, Victoria?
So overcoming, I think it really comes down to how you view challenges. Some people think that challenges are happening to me and it's something bad that's happening, but coming from the perspective of like Tony Robbins' world, it's like things happen for you, not to you. And when you trade expectations for appreciation, you can look at the challenges as something that is supposed to help you grow, right? That it's going to help take you to the next level. For example, if you think about a lobster, if you will, when it's time for it to grow, it sheds its outer layer so that it can have a new shell that's formed and so it can grow into that. And so growth is painful, like shedding that shell, like shedding a part of an identity that you might have once held on to, can be a huge challenge because people have, like Tony would say, people have a need to be consistent with how they define themselves. And a part of that is expanding our identity, and that in itself is a challenge, but it's also growth. So challenges are a sign that, at least from my own perspective, it's like you are a worthy opponent of being challenged, and therefore by overcoming these challenges, you can get to the next level of whatever you feel like is getting closer to what your goal is.
Yeah, as you take on bigger goals, bigger dreams, more responsibility, your challenges tend to grow as well. And so incrementally, as you overcome challenges, that builds muscle, mental muscle, if you will, because now you got a track record of overcoming difficult things. I think it was Henry Kissinger said, he said every problem basically creates every time you solve a problem or you overcome it, it's like it just buys a ticket to an even bigger one.
It's like increasing your threshold.
Yeah, exactly. For pain, for uncertainty, for fear that shit's not going to work out or things aren't going to go in your favor. And it's like if you think about like when you're little, the challenge is just kind of being able to walk. Mm-hmm. And eventually, no matter how many times you fall down, you keep trying to stand up. And eventually you get it. And then you kind of start running. And then eventually you got a tricycle. Then you get a bike, but it's got training wheels on it. And eventually you get rid of the training wheels. And then you're jumping like little jumps. And then as you get a little older, then you're like mountain biking and you're, taking these huge flying jumps that you're like 10, 20 feet in the air, going down ramps and stuff like that. And so it's like each time you grow beyond your comfort zone. Your skill set, your competency grows because you overcame challenges, whereas people don't reach their full potential in life, they tend to shrink from those. Mm-hmm. And so they try to, because as Tony says, and this goes back to Aristotle, people do more to avoid pain than they do to gain pleasure. Mm-hmm. And like the reality is everything you want is on the other side of all those challenges and all those obstacles. You have to find a way over them, around them, or through them. Mm-hmm. But most people psych themselves out, and they don't even start because they're afraid of all the pain. Like, I got to go to school for that. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of time. It takes money that I don't have. Mm-hmm. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the right connections. I got to get my car fixed. I got to sell my house. I got to move to a different city. I got to change my jobs. And so everything becomes avoiding any kind of challenge in life. And if you're not overcoming them, you're not growing, you're not expanding, you're not getting better.
Yeah, and part of these challenges and part of challenges is that you will fail at some point. And like you're going to feel like you're not going to achieve success, but that's part, like you have to have some losses, and I think that increases one's confidence in themselves. And people say like, oh, how are you so confident? How do I gain confidence? You keep doing the things that are challenging. And the more you overcome these challenges, the more confident you become in yourself and your ability to, master the next challenge, right? Now you're better equipped for the next challenge. It's sort of like, I don't know, when you think about people in the UFC, right? Or when they're fighting, there's a challenge. There's a challenger and then there's a champion. And when you get past, like when you win a fight, it's like that gives you confidence. Like, yeah, I have the skills, I have the ability.
Because you had a successful repetition.
Yeah,
you've had many fights practicing leading up to that. Some you won, some you lost, some you tied. But what I always say with confidence is knowing what you know how to do and doing it really well. Obviously, in that case, becoming good enough to beat the champion, and then you become the champion. And then you got somebody underneath you coming up that wants to knock you off and take your belt.
Yep, and I think a lot of times, at least people growing up, sometimes I think people make the mistake of wanting to help too soon and not letting the person fail and realize that they're being challenged. Otherwise, they're just used to someone holding their hand, and they're always constantly needing someone there with them. But when you let someone, not that you don't care, but the best way to care about somebody is just to let them fail.
Or like the helicopter parent that wants to come in and solve their kids' problems, pay their bills when they're struggling.
Yeah.
Help them with their tests, do a lot of their homework. Mm-hmm. Trying to protect them from failure.
Yeah, protecting, I think it's parental instincts, but it just messes up how much the person can grow.
You have to get good with failure in life.
Yeah.
And if you're not good with failure, you're not going to go very far.
Yeah, because you have to learn from it.
Well, if you can't handle failure, then you're going to shrink from any kind of challenge that happens in life because you're trying to avoid failure. Mm-hmm. Whereas, if you follow somebody like Elon Musk, and he talks about, it's so cool to watch him, especially with the SpaceX stuff. Mm-hmm. When the rockets are blowing up, he's not upset. He's excited. He's like, he's excited about what he's going to learn from that particular failure. And then when you eliminate all the things that cause that failure, then you have a rocket that launches satellites into space, then comes back and lands on the exact spot that you want it to because they learn from all the failures.
Yeah.
And it's like he seeks it out. High-achieving people seek out the failure because it's in the failures they're going to teach you what's wrong or what's not working. Just like Thomas Edison with the light bulb. Every time a filament didn't work that he was trying to invent the light bulb with, he's like, great, now I eliminated another material that didn't work. I'm one material closer to finding the right one that does work. Yeah. Just like, when you ask, and I know this is an example that Tony's used for decades, is when you ask a parent, it's like, well, how many times is your kid going to fall down before you're going to go, my kid's an idiot, they're never going to walk.
Yeah.
And the parent's like, are you crazy? I'm going to keep picking them up until eventually they can do it. Mm-hmm. But how many of us think like that as adults?
Not many. Like you said, our brain is wired to keep us from, pain, right? And we don't go to pleasure most of the time. And even for me as a person, it's weird to say, but I always try to put myself in situations where it's like, I want to be challenged to the point of almost getting to death, but not quite. I want to fail faster as much as possible, especially at something
without dying, obviously.
Yeah, without dying. I just don't want to die. That's all it is. But put myself in an environment where I'm being tested, and that's where you can really tap into the strengths of who you are. Because otherwise, you wouldn't know what kind of strengths you have unless you are being challenged. Because when you're in comfort zone, you're just existing. But when you're challenged, that's when your true character, your true grit, everything about you comes out, like the true colors of you. And you won't discover that unless you're being challenged.
Yeah, and reality is eventually enthusiasm is going to fade. And you're left with the grind. And you have to get up every day, and you can choose to take action or you can choose to be lazy. And the bottom line is the only thing that's going to move you towards or closer to the things you want is taking some kind of action and hopefully learning from the mistakes so the next time around you can refine your approach and try something a little better or a little more efficiently. And eventually you figure out all those little things, the differences that make the difference, kind of like the 2 millimeters. And so anybody that's been in Tony world, the 2 millimeter thing is talking about like golf. And so I can't remember who it was that taught Tony this, but it's like when it was a famous golfer and he was learning from, and he says, what's the difference between like a great golfer and just somebody that's a weekend hack, if you will. He said it's about 2 millimeters. And so, based on how the golf club hits the ball, how it's turned determines where the ball goes. And if you hit it just right, the ball goes where you want it to. But if you're slightly off, if you're a half a millimeter or 2 millimeters off, then the ball ends up in the trees or in the lake. And so it's that refinement of your approach and learning to hold the club properly. And you hit it enough times, you go through enough repetitions, and then your shots get better and better and better until most of the time, especially like people at the top echelons of the PGA, most of the time they're hitting the ball pretty good and pretty straight, and it goes where they want it to go. And that's why those guys are just so close and neck,
Mm-hmm.
typically in the tournaments until like the last day. And then what's interesting is the last day or so, when everything's on the line, the whole tournament, the whole week that they've been playing, all the rounds they played, everything's on the line, and it's really a mindset at that point, because when you get to that level, they know how to hit the damn ball, but it's how are they managing their internal psychology?
Yeah.
Are they still getting the 2 millimeter thing right, or are they full of fear and doubt and worry, and it affects their swing, and then their ball goes in the water instead of in the hole?
Yeah, and he also says like, well, it's a big doors swing on small hinges, and it's always about the little things. It's about the detail in which you do things, and yeah, it's all those the thoughts, how you swing, the angle which you swing, and it's that shift, right? It's not like you got to change the angle. It's like a small shift, a 2 millimeter, and it completely changes the trajectory of where you're headed, as opposed to just doing a radical change, and that's not sustainable. So yeah, it's all in the details.
And then with the challenges too, the harder the challenge is, the greater fulfillment you receive from it.
Yep.
You just, when you get past that, you even feel way better, because you can't be stopped.
You had a successful repetition that gives you the confidence to try something a little bigger and a little harder, a little more difficult. Maybe it's a new business, it's a new job, maybe it's a new position in your career, maybe it's a new product line that you're adding that you're not sure about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
I think it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of your results tend to come from 20% of your efforts. It's like the little differences that make the difference.
Yeah, it's also 80% psychology
20%
and 20% mechanics. Yeah, and even in relationships, they say it's what. I know it's completely not related to challenges, but the state of your relationships is a state you bring to the relationship. And 95% of success in relationships is selection. And people think it's like selection of who you choose, but it's who you select in yourself to bring out into the relationship, right? And that in and of itself, like if I'm angry all the time, I'm going to just bring out anger in the other person. But I'm bringing joy, happiness, support. The other person's going to want to also do that. Yeah, reciprocated. Anyways, challenges, purposes of challenges in life.
It's like kids especially are very sensitive to that. It's like kids respond to your mood as an adult, especially like little kids. If you're happy, they're happy. If you're angry and pissed off, they assume that they did something wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And obviously women being much more empathetic and more connected to their emotions than guys are.
They're more sensitive to it.
Yeah, exactly. How are you making her feel inside?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, women, we take criticism a lot more personally, I think, up to a certain age. I think maybe I think it's like women in their mid-20s are more sensitive to like criticism in career, relationships, whatever it is. And also, women tend to not feel safe in general around guys. So being, in a safe space with a person and then feeling supported and feeling like it's constructive feedback as opposed to, just straight criticism. And it tells it might support or challenge a narrative that they're already having in their head, how they see themselves. So I don't know.
How you perceive, it's people act consistently with how they view themselves to be, and it doesn't matter whether the view is accurate or not. If you think you're a winner, you're gonna act like a winner. You're gonna take action like a winner. You're gonna take action assuming that eventually, with enough time, enough repetition, things are gonna work out in your favor. If you think you're a loser and nothing ever works out for you, then you won't take any action.
Yeah.
And since you're not taking any action, nothing really happens, and then you just kind of are along for the ride in life.
Yeah. What does Tony say? What's wrong is always there, and so is what's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just where focus goes, energy flows. And you just got to focus on the right thing and just zero in on that.
The best thing that is always I focus on is what must I get done today before I go to bed tonight in order to feel like I was productive or I did everything that was in my control to shape and change my destiny. And as long as you do those things day in and day out, it doesn't really matter how the day goes, good day, bad day, average day, whatever. As long as you showed up and you took care of those little things, those little details, eventually that's what causes you 10, 15, 20 years in the future to end up where you want to be.
Yeah. And there will always be more things to do than there is time in a day. So as long as you just, like you said, just finding those, three most important things you want to check off for the day, you'll be good. And it will just compound over time and you have the result you want 10, 15 years down the line.